Hey guys, it is Miss Seward again. I'm gonna try to do it this way again. That way you can really focus on the text while Miss Seward is reading to you, and I can write on the screen and break it down for you
a little bit more. So today we're just going to read chapter 3, The War Starts, okay? So if you remember correctly, what we just read was the War Hawks, and it was talking about the people in America who wanted to go to war. Now, I want you to think about, from that story, why did they want to go to war? I want you to think about it for just a minute. If you are thinking, oh yeah, they wanted to go to war because they didn't think it was fair that the British were helping the Native Americans, then you were right. And they had some other reasons too. And we're going to go over all of this when we answer questions and stuff tomorrow. Okay, so let's get started. And it says chapter 3, The War Starts. And it says, presidents have to make hard choices. James Madison had to decide whether to side with the Warhawks or with the merchants. Remember that, guys. Let me undo that. I thought that I had this all figured out this time, y'all, but I don't think that I did. Oh, nope. Okay. You know what? Let's make it tiny. Okay, so James Madison had to decide whether to side with the Warhawks or with the merchants who hoped for peace, right? So the president was having to make a hard choice, like, do I go with my people who want to have war, or do I go with my people who don't? In the end, he sided with the Warhawks. So what does that mean? When you know about the Warhawks, you know that the Warhawks wanted what? They wanted to go to war. So if James Madison sided with the Warhawks, that means that he decided to go to war. And it says Madison asked Congress to declare war. On June 18th, 1812, the United States declared war on Great Britain. The Americans were in for a hard fight. The British had a huge army. They also had the world's biggest navy. But the British were already at war with France. They could only send some of their people to fight in the United States. That was a good thing for the Americans. It meant that the United States would have a better chance of winning. Oh, so they had this big war, this big army and navy, but they were already at war with France. So they couldn't send all of their people, because they could only send some of their troops to fight United States. So we didn't have to fight the whole navy, right? Let's see. Oh, next page. Oh. Silly Miss Seward. Okay. Then we have this picture, and at the picture, underneath the picture, there's a caption. It says the British were already fighting France, so they can only send some of their soldiers to fight the Americans. Even so, not a lot of people at the time could imagine that the United States could win. Today, the United States is a strong nation. It's been around for many years. It has a strong army and navy, but that was not the case in 1812. So it's telling us that now, today, the United States has a strong army and navy, but not in 1812. We were just a little baby country. In 1812, the United States was not very old as a country. It had broken away from Great Britain only about 30 years before. You guys, Miss Seward is like almost 30. I'll be 30 in a couple of years. So at the time that they were going to go to war with Great Britain, the country was only almost like Miss Seward's age. The United States had a different kind of government too. At the time, most of the nations in Europe were monarchies. Monarchies. That's an important word. Let's see if it tells us what it means. That means, right there. That means they were ruled by kings or queens. So they had kings or queens. They didn't have a president like we do. A king or queen would die or would rule until he or she died. Then, in most cases, the oldest son would take over. The United States was not a monarchy. It didn't have a king or queen. Instead, it had a president. The president was chosen by voters. He did not get to serve until he died. He served for 4 years. Then voters got the chance to pick their president. If they voted for a different president, the old one had to step down. In 1812, most people in the world felt that the American government had a very strange way of doing things. They were not sure that the system would last and that the United States would be able to survive. So they thought that we had a weird government. The rest of the whole world thought that we had a weird government because we had to pick our president, and they didn't think that we'd be able to make it as a country. This next page is a picture of James Madison, and he was elected the president at the time when most countries were ruled by kings and queens. And remember, he was our 4th president. In 1812, the United States did not have a strong army. In fact, the U.S. Army was tiny. It only had about 4,000 soldiers. So we had a tiny army. The Navy was tiny too. George Washington, the first president, had set it up. He didn't think the United States needed a big navy, but just a small number of ships to protect merchants from pirates. So remember, we have the merchants who are on the boats going to other countries to trade things. So when George Washington made our navy, he thought that we just needed people to protect those people who were going to trade, not like a big navy to fight. President Madison found a way to make the armies bigger. He got farmers to join. Many Americans were farmers. They used guns to hunt and defend their homes. Madison called on these farmers and asked them to grab their guns and join the army. Farmers were paid money and given land for joining. So he knew that these people already had to have guns and know how to use them and stuff to have their homes and their farms and stuff. So he said, it would be a good idea to ask those people to join the army, and because they're joining our army, we'll give them some money and some land. The United States soldiers were not well trained. Still, Madison was sure they could win if they attacked the British in Canada. He sent the army north to Canada. So he thought that we could win if we fought in Canada. The attack on Canada did not go well. The army lost a string. Oh my goodness. I wish this would go. A string of battles. The United States lost forts along the border. The army was simply not ready for war. And the word forts were like these buildings, not like a fort like you build now in your house with blankets. It's like a building that they would use to hide in and to protect them while they were fighting in the war. So that's a picture of the soldiers in the army. No one expected much from the tiny U.S. Navy, but things went better on the seas than they did on land. The United States battled bravely. They beat the British in a number of naval battles. So, although our army didn't do very well on land, the Navy did great. They beat the British in a lot of Navy battles. And then here's a picture. American men in the Navy during the War of 1812. Look, the two ships are fighting. All right, and that's really the end of the war starts. It's just telling you basically how James Madison decided to go to war and how we established, which means we started, our Navy and our Army. So we're probably going to talk more about this hopefully tomorrow. Miss Stewart is going to try to figure out if we can start up a Zoom, and we're going to have to do like a Zoom lesson. Okay, you guys? All right. Let me know if you have any questions about any of this today, and I will talk to y'all later. Love you guys.